Back in the day, before streaming, before CDs, we listened to music on albums. A vinyl disc spinning 33 and a third revolutions per minute brought us great music one side at a time. 20 or so minutes of music, 4 or 5 songs usually, that created a single listening experience. This format exposed us to other songs of the artist, not just the hits, and often flowed in an order that was created to build and maintain or mold a musical experience for the listener.
Sideshow brings musical experiences from the past to life today. Here, we discuss and review individual sides of record albums we have grown to appreciate and hope you will too. Welcome to The Sideshow.
All right, welcome to The Sideshow. Today, Mike is going to be taking the lead, so why don't you let the audience know what we're going to be talking about today, Mike?
All right, thanks, Mark. Today, I am going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite albums. That is Bob Dylan, Blonde on Blonde, and specifically Side 3. There's a lot of very well-known, sort of classic songs on Blonde, Rainy Day Women, I Want You, Just Like a Woman, Memphis Blues Again, and also a song that's regarded as one of Dylan's better lyrical compositions, Visions of Johanna. None of those songs are on Side 3, but Side 3, which has 5 songs on it, all 5 of the songs deal with a singer who's in some sort of dissatisfying situation in a relationship with a female in a number of different ways. And for that reason, it's a side that some types of guys, when they find themselves in such a situation, put on to sort of work through it.
When you found yourself in that position in life where you're struggling or unable to connect with a woman, it's something you can really relate to.
Yeah, and there was a time in my life where I wasn't exactly a novice to that scenario.
Oh yes, yes.
In any case, we've. But in any case, Blonde on Blonde is it's a double album. There's 4 sides, and as I said, the first 2 sides are packed with songs that a lot of people would recognize and generally acknowledge are sort of classic rock songs. Side 4 is just one track called Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. It's 12 minutes long. And while that's a little short for a full side of an album, just to put out everything that Dylan wanted, I've got the album here. The album cover has a kind of a classic, iconic picture of Bob Dylan on it.
Yeah.
One aspect of the album is that there was a person a woman in New York City in the mid-'60s named Edie Sedgwick, who was connected with the Andy Warhol scene, and she performed in a number of films that he produced in the mid-'60s. She came from a wealthy Boston, like old money family, and it's the subject of Edie Sedgwick transcends the ability to kind of sum it up in a podcast about Bob Dylan, but shows the downside of coming from money. Like one of her, and when I say Boston, I mean old money Boston. Like one of her great uncles was Robert Gould Shaw, who was the Matthew Broderick character in the movie Glory.
Yeah.
So this is someone who came from Boston society, and when she turned 21, from a grandmother or an aunt, a relative, she was able to collect an $80,000 trust fund, which this is back in the mid 60s. That was probably more like about 800,000 nowadays. And she went down to New York City, got an apartment, started hanging out, became kind of a scene maker, and then got connected with Andy Warhol. But she suffered from mental health issues. Other members of her family suffered from mental health issues. She had two brothers who died young, one by suicide, one by a motorcycle accident. And here she is, got caught up in this very, by mid 60s standards, very weird scene in New York City. But she was also she was a model. She was appeared in like Life and Vogue, and she kind of was a known person. And Bob Dylan encountered her. There's no question that they had a relationship of some kind, but it's Bob Dylan denies that there was an actual relationship between the two of them. There's other stories unconfirmed that she had an abortion and that Dylan was the father of the aborted child, but there's no actual documentation that it occurred. Blah 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 blah. Well, whatever the details were, it doesn't necessarily matter. But she made an impression on Bob Dylan. And there's really no dispute that the song Just Like a Woman was specifically about her. And there's really no dispute that the song Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat was about her. And the title Blonde on Blonde, Edie Sedgwick had her natural hair color was brown or brunette, but she sort of cut it into a pixie cut and dyed it sort of platinum blonde when she came to New York, and she would sort of re-dye her hair before the dye had started to fade. And so the Blonde on Blonde is potentially referring to her. So, and there are some of the songs on side 3 that we're going to talk about that some people argue are about her or at least reference her. So this woman died in 1971 of a drug overdose after she left the New York City scene and was living in California. Incredibly sad, tragic, and kind of pathetic story, really, that listeners can go check out elsewhere if they want to learn more about her. But there's no question that she was a muse for Bob Dylan, and he some of his songs are definitely about her, and other references to her, not quite as direct, appear in a number of the songs we're going to talk about today. Kind of leading up to, we've on an earlier of our podcasts, we talked a little bit about Bob Dylan's history in general, so we don't need to rehash that at this point. But it's worth talking about the 2 albums that preceded Blonde on Blonde. In April of 1965, Bob Dylan released Bringing It All Back Home, which was really the first album where he was backed by electric instruments. It wasn't really loud or raucous, but it was definitely electric, and definitely had a rock and roll feel to it. The songs Subterranean Homesick Blues, the song Maggie's Farm, which was the song that Bob Dylan played when he appeared before the Newport Folk Festival in July of 1965 with electric instruments and pissed everybody off.
Yeah.
And
not to all great reviews, could be said.
And but those songs were on the first side of the album. On the second side of Bring It All Back Home, it was primarily acoustic, and it was all acoustic, I should say. Mr. Tambourine Man, Gates of Eden, It's All Right Ma, and It's All Over Now Baby Blue. All of which are just classic Bob Dylan songs. And while they weren't the sort of folky protest type music of earlier in his career, they still stuck to acoustic instrumentation. And that album was released a number of months before the Newport Folk Festival, where Dylan was booed for playing with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band with an electric guitar. And the album that they were actually working on during the summer of 1965 was Highway 61 Revisited, which was released in August of 1965, not that long after the appearance at Newport. And that's a major 60s classic. You know, it had Like a Rolling Stone, a Ballad of a Thin Man, and just a classic Dylan album. And the lead guitarist for the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, whose name is Mike Bloomfield, played electric guitar on Highway 61 Revisited, and that was a more hard, loud guitar sound. For example, the second song on the album comes right after Like a Rolling Stone, called Tombstone Blues. It has some just fiery lead guitar. I mean, after Highway 61 Revisited, Dylan was big. I mean, Like a Rolling Stone sort of transitioned, you know, from being kind of a folk troubadour hero of sorts to being a full-blown rock star. To follow up Highway 61, eventually Dylan put together a different band made up of some members of his touring band who were members of what became the band, Robbie Robertson on guitar and whatnot. But for his follow-up album, which turned out to be Blonde on Blonde, which was released in June of 1966, they did some recording in New York City, but eventually went down to a studio in Nashville, Tennessee, and there was some louder, more raucous music, but it wasn't quite as in your face as some of the Mike Bloomfield electric guitar on Highway 61. And at that time, Dylan described to someone, and I haven't read this recently, but he said that it's described it. This is the album where we get closest to this sort of gold Mercury sound I have in my mind. That's a paraphrase, but this was sort of an album where the kind of balance that Dylan was looking for in terms of what he wanted to do, and at least based on some statements that he's made, was at the time kind of, you know, where he wanted to be.
Well, I think another thing about that is there's a couple aspects to that notion of being where you want to be. One is like an inability to actually be able to put what's in your head to music. The you know, whether it be the musicians that you're working with, or in the case of Bob Dylan, some pressure to remain and retain a certain type of music. And then there's the ability to have enough money or influence to be able to pay to, or have the studios or record companies pay to, you know, make this happen for you, to give you the leeway to make it happen for you. You know, some people have, you know, and I think this album is kind of a combination of both of those for Bob Dylan. You know, I mean, his very first album wasn't even his music. It was covers of other music. He was slowly being able to progress with more success into the types of things that he wanted to do. You know, an album of covers. This album of folk music, which he was incredibly popular and in doing, kind of having to drag himself into electric music against the wishes of a lot of the people around him, right? That were, you know, that where he was at, and then finally to this point. So I think it's a combination of kind of working it through your head and then having the ability to actually get it down on tape, and this album seems to be when that occurred for Bob Dylan.
Yeah, and that doesn't detract from the quality of the music he produced on any of his albums.
Oh no, not at all.
In particular, the two previous albums. I mean, I think that the triumvirate of Bring It All Back Home, Highway 61, Blonde on Blonde, I mean, that is a high point of sort of rock music achievement that is, I wouldn't say unparalleled, but is a major high point of recorded output for any musician in the rock era. Those three albums, and the kind of the crown jewel of the three, or most regard as Blonde on Blonde.
I mean, and Blonde on Blonde, as well as Highway 61 Revisited, but particularly Blonde on Blonde. I mean, this album is in the conversations about the greatest records of all time when it comes to rock music. So clearly, these were achievements, and I would agree. And particularly, of all three, but particularly with Highway 61 Revisited and then Blonde on Blonde, this was the arrival of Bob Dylan at the top of his game, and the top of his influence. He was now this star. He was incredibly commercially successful, and he and had garnered a lot of respect both commercially and critically. But this album was really kind of the pinnacle of that.
Yeah. So, in any case, Bob Dylan's Blonde on Blonde. Here we are. Let's go to side 3. Side 3 opens up with a track titled "Most Likely You Go Your Way and I'll Go Mine." The song has sort of a rollicking, devil may care attitude, is sort of the tone of things. There's this trumpet harmonica line that is not quite as much like a Salvation Army band as Rainy Day Women, with the everybody must get stoned. But it's that kind of thing. And it's, and just the vibe is sort of, that the singer has is just kind of laconically clownish. The singer is a man who's been putting up with a woman who doesn't really want him, but doesn't want to be perceived as the bad guy, or lose the self-validation that comes from his adoration of her, and he's fed up with it, and so he's kind of jabbing at her. You say you love me and you're thinking of me, but you could be wrong. And then, at the beginning of the next verse, he's like, you say you disturb me and you don't deserve me, but sometimes you lie. And it's just he's gotten to the point where he's going to draw a line in the sand with this woman.
Well, and I one of the great things about as we go through these albums, and you shared you were going to be doing this. It's been a long time since I listened to this album, and I really enjoy the opportunity to say I'm just gonna listen to this side of an album, and I'm not going to pay attention to the names of the songs. I'm not going to even really know what I'm listening to. So try to listen to them as fresh as possible, even though I've heard all of these songs at some point in the past. And this song, what I think of when I hear the song is circus. Circus is what comes to my mind. It's got that, you talked about it, kind of almost you're joking around, or there's kind of a humorous sense, because he's gotten to a point where he's been able to convince himself he doesn't care anymore. And about this. And to me, the most profound line, and you hear this kind of at the end of each verse, is, and I'm gonna let you pass. And he's made the decision, I am just gonna let you pass. And then he talks about, well, it'll get sorted out later, who is right and who is wrong. He says, and then time will tell just who fell and who's been left behind, when you go your way and I go mine. And I just I'm going to let you pass. And that's the decision that he's made. And then the rest is kind of like, because either his relationship has become a circus, or he's trying to make it as light as possible to allow this transition to happen. But the decision has been made in his mind.
Yeah. Time will tell just who has fell and who's been left behind when you go your way and I go mine. The tone of the song suggests that he's confident that
Yes.
he's not the one that's going to have been left behind.
Yes. Yes.
It's sort of like, you're going to, there's a song by the Velvet Underground where Lou Reed sings, one of these days, and it won't be long, you're going to look for me, and baby, I'll be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of like, you seem pretty carefree right now, but you may regret later. And it's hard not to interpret this song as being that way. Time will tell. Now, I mean, it is, well, time will tell. We'll find out. But
yeah,
you sense a confidence in the singer.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can clearly tell how he feels history will shake this one out.
The and the kind of the bridge of the song where he says, the judge, he holds a grudge, he's going to call on you, but he's badly built and he walks on stilts. Watch out, he don't fall on you. Mm-hmm. So sort of telling you best be careful. Not that, I mean, that's not a threatening song, but it's it's easy for you to be confident right now because you see yourself as holding all the cards, but we're going to change, I'm going to change the game, and we'll tell you, this is my decision, you're lost, Toots, kind of thing. So I mean, I don't know if there's not that much more to talk about the lyrics, or what the song is about, but it really does, the circus is a good word. It's sort of like I'm going to have my fun, and I can do it without you. And it's sort of it's not a morose feeling sorry for himself, shattered by the failure of a relationship. It's more like he's wising up.
And I would say, as the start of this side, when you end up, and we'll obviously be going through all the songs on the side, but this one is one where he's in a position of confidence, as we've talked about. He's made this decision, he feels it's the right decision, and he's in control. I think that as we move on to some of these other songs, he's not finding himself in a position of control.
Well, I mean, and that's a good, that's sort of a good segue into the second track, which is called "Temporary Like Achilles," and that's sort of that's a slower, I guess you call it a blues song. It's got sort of a languid pace to it. It's got kind of this piano heavy intro with a guitar in the background, just sort of a kind of like a guy sauntering into town on a horse at a sort of not in any hurry. And
I would actually say, again, listening to this fresh, I literally thought to myself, when it first started, I didn't realize Rainy Day Woman was on this album. I feel this one really has that same type of, also, Everybody Must Get Stoned is what people will think of as that song, the way that slow dragging horn kind of, and you can tell in a few moments that's not it, but that really is kind of how the song starts, that kind of like slow chugging horn and harmonica that comes in.
Yeah. And this is a song where there's some people who, theorize that this is about Edie Sedgwick, and that Achilles represents Andy Warhol, and how, just given the how she had become part of the scene in New York City, and Warhol's sort of entanglement in that whole situation, that there would never be able to be a relationship between the two of them because her connection to Warhol would be in the way. But this is a song where that Dylan is singing to a woman, kind of like before, but the woman in this song, she doesn't care about playing the heavy or losing the singer's affection. She just doesn't want to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
So she sends another guy, the Achilles character, out to do her dirty work for her. And the singer has just grown weary of that. And so Bob's just kind of tired of it. And I think that's a good word to describe the pace of the song. There's kind of a weariness in it, and some of the harmonica breaks are just sort of reflect just a fatigue and I don't need this shit kind of attitude to it. And it's really not particularly kind, to the woman, where he says, I want your lovin', honey, why are you so hard? And some of the lyrics that have been connected to Edie Sedgwick are, I'm trying to read your portrait, but I'm helpless like a rich man's child. And some of the, I lean against your velvet door. And there's just these sort of allusions to sort of upper class sensibility when referring to the woman in the song.
Well, and I've seen in some lyrics that trying to read your portrait. When I listen to the song, I actually hear it like I'm trying to read your poetry, and I see this as a real jab against rich kids. It's like I'm trying to read, I'm trying to understand something, but I'm helpless. I can't understand it. Kind of like a rich man's child is unable to understand complicated things. You can kind of almost feel a dig against, children from families with money, which not only would have been Edie, but a number of the people that she associated with. And their ability to really be able to understand more complex things. So I thought that was interesting. Kind of a dig there.
Well, and in Like a Rolling Stone, some of the lyrics there, like, well, you went to the finest schools, all right, Miss Lonely, but you only used to get juiced in it. I mean, and there's some speculation that Edie Sedgwick was the Miss Lonely character in that song. And that just, well, yeah, sure, you went to this good school, but all you did was party. Yeah. And now you got to learn how to live out on the street, and you're going to have to get used to it. Which is kind of what happened to Edie Sedgwick, because she blew through her 80 grand in like 6 months. And she, they just partied till the money ran out, kind of thing. But I don't think it's really true that this. I don't buy. I mean, Dylan had the power in that whatever the relationship was between he and she. I think Dylan had the power. And she needed the relationship more than he did. And so I don't buy the fact that this song was about her, despite the fact that there's some lyrical references that suggest it.
But I do think, regardless of who it's about, it does a real great job showing the how sad or disappointed that she is so hard. I mean, when he says that line, "Honey, why are you so hard?" I mean, it's almost pleading the way that he does it. It's like, why are you? He does it better in his lyrics, but you can really hear the longing in his voice to wish that she wasn't so hard. But so he does a great job in showing that he's in this situation, and it's like, baby, you are just too freaking hard at everything.
The bridge lyrics in this song are, like a poor fool in his prime. Yes, I know you can hear me walk, but is your heart made out of stone, or is it lime, or is it just solid rock? I mean, it's an anguished.
Yes.
He's just
anguish is the word that I was looking for there.
So not particularly uplifting, but more of a kind of the tired hero. It's not a pitiful song, despite the anguish. And I don't think any of these really are, just the way that he chooses to approach it. But
Sure.
in any case, the moving on to the third song on side three, which is one of the Dylan's great songs, Absolutely Sweet Marie. And I mean, it is an upbeat, almost optimistic rocker, very good timing. And he's the singer. He wants a woman who is leading him on. Is what's going on, and and he's beginning to see the light. He's beginning to realize that that's what's happening here,
Yeah.
and that maybe he shouldn't, be investing in a relationship with this woman. But it hasn't gotten as far as, the first song, Most Likely You Go Your Way and I'll Go Mine. I mean, he hasn't drawn a line in the sand. The singer, and I guess we should probably just refer to him as Bob, because he's the singer. But Bob is still willing to take what he can get. He still wants Marie. And during the middle of the verse, that it goes into this minor chord that just it kind of it conveys some poignancy, as opposed to either the kind of triumph or weariness of the previous two songs. And
I also see there's several points in the song where, as you pointed out, it's becoming really clear to him that he's being kept at a distance, right? He's starting to get the realization that he's never going to go past there. I like the line, it's towards the end, where, he says, "Yes, I can take him to your house, but I can't unlock it. You see, you forgot to leave me with the key." And there's a difference between being allowed to crash on somebody's couch for a couple nights and being able to stay with them for a while. And that line is drawn when the person gives you the key. And until you're given the key, it's very clear to you, you do not live here. I think as probably someone who, especially early in New York City, had to potentially move around a little bit, that notion of having a key to where you were living was a pretty big deal in those times.
Well, and some of the specific lyrics, in this song are just. The opening line, it's one of the great opening lines. In my opinion, even in the context of Dylan, where he's like, "Your railroad gate, I just can't jump it." And it's sort of, geez, I just can't jump it. I can see you there on the other side, but I just can't make it over. And then he says, "I'm just sitting here beating on my trumpet." Now, what? Not one of Dylan's more subtle illusions. But he's with all these promises you left for me, where are you tonight, sweet Marie? So it's just, they're just, oh, well, we'll get together tomorrow, or we'll get together next weekend, and this and that. But the one of the bridge lyrics, then there's two sets of what I refer to as bridge lyrics, where it's not not the regular verse chorus. Where it says, "Well, anybody can be just like me, obviously, but then now again, not too many can be like you, fortunately." So that's sort of like he's kind of feeling sorry for himself a little, but also starting to, but I may not be the bad guy here. And then where he says, "Well, I don't know how it happened, but the riverboat captain, he knows my fate. But everybody else, even yourself, are just gonna have to wait."
Mm-hmm.
So he's sort of like, okay, she's still Sweet Marie. He's still longing for her, but the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And well, and another
And,
thing. Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say this. I mean, the song does such a good job. I can only speak for myself, but I'm going to imagine this was an experience of a lot of high school boys, of, really falling for someone that you were just never going to have for all kinds of reasons, right? It was a girl that was out of your league. It was a girl that just didn't, share your interests, or didn't see anything appealing. That could be someone who's leading you on, or even in a situation where the person wasn't necessarily leading you on. Maybe you just couldn't get up the nerve to go up to them and talk to them. But I think that a lot of young men have been in this situation, and young women as well, where you're really just attached to someone. You see this as a dream, and it just isn't happening, and this realization that it's not going to happen, and it's not really your fault that it's not going to happen. A really relatable song, and for music where the lyrics are so important, which Dylan's music absolutely is, just such a strong resonation with, I'm sure, several million young boys out there right now.
Well, one of the most interesting verses. Well, they're all interesting, but
Yeah.
one of the verses where it's, well, 6 white horses that you did promise were finally delivered down to the penitentiary. But to live outside the law, you must be honest. I know you always say that you agree, but where are you tonight, Sweet Marie? Now, to live outside the law, you must be honest. I mean, there's a lot of significance to that lyric, separate from this situation between Dylan and the woman he's singing about, Marie.
Mm-hmm.
But in the context of that situation, or at least how I interpreted it, is that Marie is changing the rules of engagement at her whim,
Mm-hmm.
as this situation unfolds.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't play by the rules, it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
if you don't want to play by the rules, there still has to be some sort of code that you stick to, and she doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just whatever happens to suit her needs at the time, and so that's just one of the verses, and you've already mentioned the one, but at the end, where he sings, and now I stand here looking at your yellow railroad in the ruins of your balcony, wondering where you are tonight, Sweet Marie. The So Marie's not there, and
Yeah.
the ruins of your balcony. It's sort of like Romeo, kind of, speaking his love to Juliet as he's down, in the shrubbery, and she's up on the balcony, but she's not there. And looking at your yellow railroad, I interpret that to mean that she's split, she's gone, and that implies, the yellow implies cowardice, and because she's not willing to face him, she's not willing to, she's willing to lead him on, but she's not willing to just sort of face him and put her cards on the table.
Mm-hmm. And which, for anybody that's been led on in a relationship, at the end you realize it just would have been better if that person, if that object of that affection would have just come out at the very beginning and said, this is never going to work. And to your point, whether that was cowardice or whether that was, I can literally drag this person along. Yes, this is you can see that at the end, and how this is really seen as cowardice of the woman in this case.
Well, but it's it's not a it's a happy song. I mean, just the vibe of the song, and it's the sort of song that makes you tap your foot and think, that, I mean, if the next, as soon as the song is over, if Marie shows up and says, "Okay, I've got this sorted out. I'm ready to get down to business with you. Let's go out," and bang, he'd be there.
Yeah.
It's like there's still affection for Marie, and which is, and Dylan's not always the most optimistic guy, when it comes to these things. So it is a great song, and one of Dylan's classics, as far as I'm concerned. All right, moving right along, the next song, the fourth song on the side is coincidentally called "Fourth Time Around," and this song has a very delicate guitar intro, which kind of continues throughout the song, and then some light drums and bass come in as accompaniment, and there's some harmonic in there, but it's not really a rock song. It's got more of a folky quality to it, and kind of one of the standard takes on Fourth Time Around is that supposedly, or I don't know if there's really any controversy about that, but John Lennon was inspired by Bob Dylan and Bob Dylan's style of songwriting to when he wrote Norwegian Wood on Rubber Soul, and that Dylan kind of took a situation that was maybe similar to the scenario that is portrayed in Norwegian Wood, in a more artsy fartsy, ambiguous way. And so sort of like Dylan imitating Lennon imitating Dylan is one take on that. But it's
you certainly hear that in the song, and the perspective of the song is the same. This is what I said or did, and then this is what she said or did, and this is what I said or did, which is the exact same back and forth of Norwegian Wood. And you can hear again in the notion of just a fresh listen to this, which I recently gave to this. I mean, you can really you can feel a little bit of Norwegian Wood even in the way that the music is put together. So that's definitely there, and how it was done, whether you want to call that a parody or again, imitation of each other, I believe it's absolutely there.
And in this song, Bob is telling his current lover about his previous lover, who was apparently a woman who set boundaries that Bob didn't appreciate, who didn't open herself or her life to him, and it was a very transactional relationship. Where it was then that I got up to leave, but she said, "Don't forget, everybody must give something back for something they get." So the relationship that Bob is describing to his to the woman he's currently involved with, that the previous one was, they periodically made each other feel good, but the woman was like, "Don't ask for anything more." So he feels initially, he says, "She threw me outside. I stood in the dirt where everyone walked." And so he felt put out by her. But, you go to the verse leading up to that, where, she said, "Don't get cute." So I forced my hand in my pockets and felt with my thumb and gallantly handed her my very last piece of gum. That's what happens before, she throws him out. But then he forgets his shirt. So he went back and knocked and, waits in the hallway while she goes to get it. And he says, and I tried to make sense out of that picture of you in your wheelchair that leaned up against. Now, he's in the hallway waiting for his old girlfriend or this old relationship, but he's talking about that picture of you, and he's talking to a different woman.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how I see kind of the thing here, and that makes no sense to me. I'm not sure what that means. Although some people have said that there was a time when Edie Sedgwick got into a car accident around the time that she was involved with Dylan, and she was in a wheelchair,
Mm-hmm.
because her leg was injured. I don't know about that, but it's not particularly clear what that's about.
Mm-hmm.
But while he's talking to her after he goes back into to get his shirt, he asks for some of her rum, her Jamaican rum. She said, "No, dear." Then he said, "Your words aren't clear. You'd better spit out your gum." Well, she apparently didn't like that comment.
Mm-hmm.
And so she screamed till her face got so red that she fell on the floor. I don't know what that means. Then, he they got so drunk and she passed out, or she was just so angry at him for making this wisecrack that she passed out.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Yeah, and if someone was screaming and their face getting red, and then they fell to the floor, might be what would happen to someone after some very extreme sex as well. It's like this could have been after some rum when they came back in. I've got to be honest with you, I don't know what it means either. I just see and look at some of these things because, well, that may make sense, but it doesn't really tie to what was happening before or later. So Bob's leading us on a little journey, I think, here.
Well, and then the last verse of the song, because after she falls on the floor and he covers her up, he goes and looks through her drawer.
Yeah.
Supposedly for his shirt, but it doesn't necessarily say. But he goes, "And when I was through, I filled up my shoe and brought it to you. And you took me in. You loved me then. You never wasted time. And I never took much. I never asked for your crutch. Now don't ask for mine." And, I guess how I interpret that is, now Bob is more or less telling his new lover that it's going to be, that the way it's going to be between them is going to be how it was between him and his prior relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That there was never going to be this, this full blown loving, giving and taking and sharing and no secrets, sort of, no questions. Let's just enjoy while we can enjoy and not make this too complicated. Very transactional.
Well, and this transition here is again very much like Norwegian Wood. If you think of the song, Norwegian Wood, she told me she worked in the morning and started to laugh. I told her I didn't and went off to sleep in the bath. In this song, it's, and I covered her up then and then thought I'd go look through her drawer. Both of those cases, it's kind of a situation where it's like, what? Why'd you sleep on the bath? Why didn't you sleep on the couch? Why'd you go looking through her drawer? And then both songs transition to, and when the Beatles goes, and when I awoke, I was alone, this bird had flown. And in Dylan's case here, he says, and when I was through. I really see this lead up to the last part of the song as, again, so much the same. It's almost like, one was looking at the lyrics written down of the other, and then let me change this up a little bit and see something else. Again, it's hard to miss that, especially when you're listening to the song live. It feels that way. Not live, but when you're listening to the song itself, it feels that way.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very legitimate comparison between the songs. I mean, it rings true, and Dylan had just a more sardonic approach,
Yes.
to the situation, but it's unlike the other songs on the side, in the fact that it's a more acoustic, a gentler song, but it isn't a particularly uplifting song. I mean, it doesn't speak well of the types of relationships that the singer is in with both the woman, the prior relationship he's describing, and the current one. I never asked for your crutch, don't ask for mine. He's sort of kind of, there's going to be a certain distance between us that's never going to close. Which is how, some relationships are. And there are some people who like their intimate relationships with a member of the opposite sex to be that way. Just Dylan has sort of a more ambiguous, arty way of laying it out.
Absolutely.
The last song on the side, the fifth track, also coincidentally, obviously Five Believers, it's a pretty straightforward track musically, and it's got this guitar harmonica riff that kind of starts the song and separates the verses. That it's just the most straightforward musically. Absolutely Sweet Maria is very straightforward musically, but that's just sort of an up-tempo, upbeat rocker, whereas this is a kind of a gut level blues song, both with the harmonica and the guitar. And it's hard to call this one a love song of any kind. And Bob, is basically singing, and what he believes is it's better to be with someone than no one. Early in the morning, I'm calling you to please come home. Yes, I could make it without you if I just didn't feel so all alone. So he's not like he's not supplicating this woman, or he's not a supplicant to this woman. He's not, begging for her affection. He's not offering his affection. He's just like, hey, beats being alone, so don't go.
Yeah. Or please come home. It's not that he's overly happy with the situation, but he, to your point, it's better than nothing at all.
And now, and one something that's kind of interesting in the second verse, where it's like, "Don't let me down. I won't let you down. No, I won't." Well, on the album, he closes up the verse by saying, I know, honey, but oh, honey, please don't. That's what you hear when you listen to the record. Well, I've got a book of Bob Dylan lyrics that our mother gave me about 35 or more years ago. And if you even go on Bob Dylan's website, it has the lyrics, don't let me down, I won't let you down, no, I won't. I can if you can, honey, but honey, please don't. So the actual lyrics as written are, I can if you can, but don't. So that's really kind of almost like kind of a take, you can take it or leave it I can take this or leave it, but I'd rather take it for now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he fudged the lyrics and they just liked that take, or and they said, "Ah, to heck with it," let them, they'll figure it out, or they don't need to figure it out, or it doesn't matter. I don't know. I do have a box set of Bob Dylan's called it's one of the bootleg series, and it's called The Cutting Edge, and it's about the recording that he was doing in the studio around this time. And it's I haven't listened to it since I got it, which was 10 years ago or something,
Sure.
like whenever it came out. But it's got a lot of the takes, and I could look back at that, but in any event, there is a discrepancy between the lyrics as written and the lyrics that appear.
And what you hear, yeah.
And I think I Can If You Can, it's very telling about what this song is about.
Yeah. Well, I think that this side and ending with this song, which is clearly, as you listen to the beat and kind of just the strength musically of the song, this is a crescendo to the side. The side starts with, as we talked about, kind of this. I call it circus-like. It's moving. It's a foot tapping song, and then moves to a much slower, a more reserved song with the second song. Then it steps back up again on the third track, and then for the fourth track, which we just spoke about, it kind of is a little bit in between. It's not a real ballad type slow song, but certainly nothing powerful. But so we're slowly stepping our way up to kind of up and down, but to this last song, which is really musically a much more powerful. It's got a just more memorable type of riff is the wrong word, because it's a combination of this harmonic and guitar and this type of thing that is in there that just is a great way to cap off this side, this experience of listening to this entire side.
It's a rock and blues song.
Yeah.
It really is, with kind of an edge to it. It's not a good timey sounding. It's more sort of crying out. But the verse about I got my black dog barking. Yes, it is now outside my yard. Yes, I could tell you what he means if I just didn't have to try so hard. And that, he says that in a very complaining way. And I guess I interpret that to mean that, there's a failure to communicate. He's while he's asking this woman to please come home, I don't want to feel alone, but he's also kind of saying I can take it or leave it. And also saying, it'd be easier to deal with you if I didn't have to work so hard at it. If I and then the next verse about her mother, your mama's working, your mama's moaning, she's crying, she's trying, you better go now. So there's some involvement of this woman's mother in the situation. He said, well, I tell you what she wants, but I just don't know how. And it's sort of like whatever the situation is, whatever the issue is with this woman's relationship with her mother, Dylan's kind of telling her, I can't really help you with your problems.
Yeah.
In this situation, and then the second to the last verse is basically the same as the first verse. It's a repeat of the first verse of the song. But the penultimate verse where he's 15 jugglers, 5 believers, all dressed like men. Tell your mama not to worry, 'cause they're just my friends. And I don't know what the fuck that means. But my theory is that the 5 believers are him and his band. And the 15 jugglers are the hangers-on, the Bob Newworth type characters and whatnot. So that's him, Bob. I'm just playing my guitar, singing my songs. Be nice if I had someone to keep me warm at night. If not, guess that's the way it goes.
Yep.
But I'm still going to play.
Yeah.
And
He's still a believer.
yeah, and so it's sort of it's kind of a look. You know, I don't like being alone, but I'm going to keep on going. But it'd be nice if you'd come home, baby.
Yeah.
Is
Yep.
what he's is. That's how I see it. And that's, you know, that's not the most optimistic, feel good approach to, you know, how you live, you know, emotionally
It's
with another person. But I think there were times where Dylan felt that was maybe about the best he was going to get, at least at some point in his life before he sort of settled down.
I see it as kind of a this is the business we have chosen type attitude. It's like, you treat me like this, and sometimes I treat you like this. And it is yes, it's imperfect, but it's tolerable kind of a yeah, this is kind of what we agreed to. These were the ground rules from the beginning. So it's not like somebody was betrayed. It's better than nothing, but starting to realize maybe there could be something better out there.
Yeah. It's a great song.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's an example of how Bob Dylan, he was into the blues. You know, there's other, Pledging My Time and Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat. You know, Bob Dylan was definitely into the blues, and he was a rocker at heart. You know, and which is not that was all he was about, but that was certainly part of his sort of DNA. And so, for these three albums and on Blonde, he was able to fuse a lot of those things and kind of do what we talked about earlier and really kind of find a balance and a blend of different things that was just distinctly Bob Dylan. And this song, though probably the least characteristic of him, like just a rock and blues song with guitar and harmonica, it's also a very good example of what he was trying to do. And a good way to close out the side.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
So for now, Mark and I have both been very happily married for decades, at this point, and so it's been a long time since I pulled this out for the stated purpose at the beginning, but for anyone, for any younger men out there who have yet to figure out the female animal, just put on side 3 of Bob Dylan's Blonde on Blonde, and you will receive guidance.
Guidance and company, right?
Yeah.
For what you're doing. Great side, Mike. Great side and great conversation.
Sounds good. We will talk to you next time.